What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Keep It Hoop podcast. First episode in a few weeks. Wanted, as usual, to just go over some of the things going around the league. Talk about some things I've also posted on Instagram and Twitter, and kind of go more in depth on those topics. So first, let's just talk about some of the teams that are surging. You have the Phoenix Suns playing really good basketball still. I know Chris Paul has been inserted into some of the MVP discussions. That was something that I wanted to talk about because I'm very impressed with what Chris Paul's done. I like what Phoenix has done as a team, and I think that Chris Paul, I've been vocal about this. Wherever he goes, the man just wins, right? Turned that Hornets team around when he was drafted by them. Did the same thing to the Rockets, improved their chances of or at least performing in the playoffs. Obviously, what he did last year in OKC was unexpected, and he's done a similar thing in Phoenix. The one thing I do want to point out is, one, you're adding Chris Paul, who again has had a really good season, but you're adding him to a team that almost made the playoffs. They were half a game out of the playoff spot last season, and then they obviously finished the season at the bubble or in the bubble really hot, right? And you're adding another year of experience, another offseason of growth for the young players on that team. So Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, you have Cam Johnson, and then you have DeAndre Ayton, among others. So that team was supposed to be better this season than they were last season. So I think even without Chris Paul, I would have expected the Suns team to be around a 6, 7, maybe 8 seed, right? And that's not to say that he hasn't added a lot to this team. His ability to facilitate the offense, make things for Devin Booker way easier, get guys like Cam Johnson, DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges easy shots, keep everyone composed. You have the leadership, the off-court stuff. You have everything he does on defense, and then the way he's able to perform in the clutch. So I don't want to downplay what he's done for this team, but I don't think that, because I saw him in a lot of graphics along with Jokic and Embiid, and I don't think that he's on that level of an MVP campaign. I think what Jokic has done with his team, and especially since Jamal Murray's out, we'll talk a bit more about that later, but everything he's done leading his team in all the categories that he does lead the team in, I think that's been super impressive. And I think Jokic, Embiid, same thing. And the stats for Chris Paul just aren't there. And I'm someone who doesn't like to judge everything off of stats, but in a game, in an era where a lot of things are determined by stats, especially the MVP award, where it's not always given to the best player in the league, it's not always given to the most valuable player, even though that's what the award means. I think that Jokic and Embiid have just had better seasons. And if we're going by a lot of the metrics and a lot of the things that we've based past MVPs on, I think those two are still the favorites. You have those two. And then in the second category or second tier, I would have guys like LeBron. I know he's missed games, but so has Embiid, to be fair. And then you have Steph Curry, Dame. So I think you have those kinds of guys, and then I think you have, a little bit outside of those guys in the conversation, you have Chris Paul, Julius Randle as well. So, I don't have a problem with him being in the conversation, and I want to put finger quotes around that because for different people, that conversation includes a different amount of people. But I think it really comes down to the only people who have a real chance of winning the award is probably Jokic and Embiid. And I don't think there's anyone else besides that. If you're just going by best player in the league, right? LeBron, Durant, Giannis, they're gonna have their argument for it. You can have Steph there, and he fits in the bill of being one of the best players in the league, but also being the most valuable for his team. Because you take all these players away from their team, and Steph away from the Warriors, that team might be the worst. Whereas LeBron without the Lakers, you still have AD. Jokic without the Nuggets without Jokic, they might not be as good. If they were fully healthy, still a better team than the Warriors are. And you can say the same thing about the Bucks without Giannis, the Blazers without Dame. So I think if you want to go about that, Steph has had an insane run, an insane season. He can be in that conversation as well. But A lot of times it is also just narrative and media driven, and I think Jokic just has the. It seems like he has a clear path, and it's his award to lose at this point. Um, Going on to Utah, they've still been pretty good without Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley. I think the Donovan Mitchell injury isn't too much to worry about. He's young. It's an ankle issue. It's not something he's had too many problems with in the past. Mike Conley, him and injuries, you always have to worry about because he's had decent amount of injuries in the past, be it hamstring, groin, ankle, knees. So if the Jazz want to replicate the success that they had earlier on in the season and go into the playoffs with full momentum and perform and live up to those expectations, they're gonna need Mike Conley to be fully healthy. Again, in the regular season, you have a guy like Joe Ingles, who's a very good playmaker for his position, guy who can knock down threes. They've been fine for the most part, but again, in the postseason, they're gonna need Conley back. The Sixers, they've been pretty good. Again, the reason I'm going in this order, by the way, is I'm just going by the power rankings on ESPN. That's just what I was looking at before I started recording this. I'm just going to go by that order. Philadelphia, they've been pretty solid still. 43 and 21. Ben Simmons missed a few games, I think last week, and you kind of saw their defense struggle. Even their offense a little bit got a bit stagnant again. Ben Simmons, I think, is one of those guys where his numbers aren't bad per se, but I think his impact on the Sixers goes beyond the numbers. And a lot of that is because how important he is defensively to that team. You have Embiid and Ben Simmons, who together have been able to really anchor that defense. Ben Simmons, a lot of it on the perimeter, and Embiid down in the paint. You take away Ben Simmons, and that team suddenly lacks a lot of, or too many good defensive players. Matisse Thybulle is a very good perimeter defender, and you still have Embiid. But other than that, Tobias Harris, an average defender at best. Seth Curry, minus defender. George Hill, decent. Korkmaz, maybe. I guess you can say decent, but you don't have too many lockdown guys on that team. So when Ben Simmons is out, it makes everything harder. And on offense as well, you have another guy that you're taking away a guy that can make plays for himself, although not as much, but also for other people, and also a guy that can lead the fast break. We always talk about the importance or how useful it is to have a guy on your team that can grab the rebound and just start the fast break. A lot of the elite teams have that. You have guys like LeBron, Giannis, KD, Luka, Harden, right? Guys who have high rebound numbers, but also can not only make plays for themselves but other people. And Ben Simmons falls under that category, so they miss a lot of that as well. Brooklyn, I know they lost both of their games against the Bucks. I made a video on that. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. Keep It Hoop on YouTube. But yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from at least the first game was that I know KD went over 40 points, but his baskets they just looked way harder to get than Giannis's 40 plus points were. A lot of Giannis's points were off of pretty good action or fast breaks, and just getting really good post positioning against DeAndre Jordan. He did make down a few threes, which DeAndre Jordan, it looked like the game plan was to just give Giannis the wide open three. Giannis hit a few. We don't know, going at least if this was like a playoff series, we don't know how consistent Giannis can be in knocking down the three, regardless of how much space he's giving, which is why they're giving him that space to begin with. But I think the thing with, again, like Kevin Durant just had to work so hard for his shots, and Kevin Durant is one of, if not the greatest scorers of all time. And he can do that kind of thing on a nightly basis, but it's still a lot of pressure to put on someone who's coming off of an injury such as he is. And he's looked healthy for the most part this season. In terms of the Achilles, I know he's dealt with, the tightness in other places, and he just dealt with other injuries. But yeah, it's a lot of pressure to put on him. I think Chris Middleton and PJ Tucker and Giannis at times did a pretty good job on him. Giannis blocked his jump shot. You almost never see Kevin Durant's jump shot getting blocked, so that was impressive. And, James Harden is missed because James Harden is the true facilitator on that team. Kevin Durant isn't a bad passer, and neither is Kyrie. But both of those guys are, in all essence, just true scorers. And James Harden is obviously a very good scorer, but he's also one of the best passers in the game. And when he first came to the Nets, he had taken on that role as a point guard. I know Kyrie by position is a point guard, but he kind of started to play more like a shooting guard. Kevin Durant, again, still looking to get his own, and James Harden came in. There's a few games where Harden was only averaging or scoring 18, 19, 20, 21 points. And he was getting Kevin Durant the ball in his, wherever he likes it, getting guys like Kyrie his shots. And it also helped out Joe Harris a lot. Joe Harris was looking like an all-star at times with James Harden out there because of just how good James Harden is at taking on the double team or getting the attention, manipulating the defense, and kicking it out to shooters. DeAndre Jordan also benefited from James Harden being out there because of the amount of pick and rolls they run with James Harden and DeAndre Jordan, something that they don't do as much with Kyrie and Kevin Durant, because I think both of those guys like to operate out of the isolation a lot more than Harden does. And Harden does obviously like to go to the ISO too, but I think he started to depend more on the pick and roll in his earlier times with the Nets than he had, for example, in his time in Houston. So they do miss him there. I will say that Harden coming back isn't necessarily going to stop Giannis. I mean, he's a decent rebounder, one of the better rebounders they have actually. He's actually one of the better post defenders they have, at least analytically as well. So I think that'll help a bit. But if like Harden's guarding Giannis, if Harden has to guard Embiid in the playoffs, like the two big teams that they're gonna have to go up against, it's going to be difficult, right? So Harden doesn't help too much on defense. Again, a little bit of post defense and a little bit of rebounding. Sure, he helps a little bit. I guess the other thing that you do have to keep in mind is the fact that it is easier to set up on defense off of makes, obviously. And as James Harden is inserted back into the lineup and is healthy, they're going to score more points, which means they'll be able to set up on defense instead of giving guys like, let's say, Ben Simmons and then the aforementioned Giannis fast break opportunities. So it will help indirectly with their defense to a degree, but it's going to be hard because the Nets tried everything, right? They tried giving Giannis that three. And again, if that three isn't going, which there's going to be games where it's not, then you have something to work off of if you're Brooklyn. But if he's making it like that, DeAndre Jordan can't really do anything. Giannis is strong enough to contend with DeAndre down to the paint. Had a couple of nice hook shots and the mid-range fadeaways, and they later on put Blake Griffin on him to kind of match up with the speed a bit, but it was just he was still too fast for him. Neither of those guys, DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin, can really match up with Giannis well. Claxton's the one guy who has the length and athleticism and quickness to do so, but he's just way too weak. Maybe if it was like 2 years down the line and he is bulked up a bit more, that would have been a finer matchup. But at this point, yeah, they have no answer for him. Not that a lot of teams in the East or just any team in the league really has an answer for Giannis. The best answer historically over the last year or two has been Bam Adebayo. So that is a matchup I do want to see again. You have the Nuggets, who have looked actually really good since Jamal Murray's been out. And that's not to say that the Nuggets are better without him, but it really just Jokic and Michael Porter Jr. have just taken their games to the next level. I talked a lot about Michael Porter Jr. having to really step up and be that second guy, and this really is his chance that he hadn't really had since coming into the league, and he's answered the call. He's been very clutch. He's shooting really high percentages from the field and from three, and when guys or when teams and guys talked about Michael Porter Jr. coming out of college, this is what people were referring to. And I know he had the injuries, and that's the only reason he slipped to, I think, 13 it is, that he ended up falling to Denver. But the talent is there, right? I mean, he has Tracy McGrady like potential, the size, the shooting, and the athleticism, and he's kind of put together the defense and rebounding this year. So again, I don't think that they're obviously going to be as good as they would have been with Murray, but I've said over and over that for the Nuggets to reach their highest potential, that Denver needs Michael Porter Jr. to be the second best player on the team, and maybe this is kind of, I wouldn't say a blessing in disguise, because I don't want to say that for a guy going through an ACL injury, but maybe this is what they needed, right? So maybe in the long term, this actually ends up helping out the Nuggets because, again, more Michael Porter Jr. And the more Michael Porter Jr. that they've gotten, the better he seems to be, and maybe this is just the experience and kind of training he needed And again, they're probably not going to go very far in the playoffs, but they I think they can benefit from this. This is one of those situations where it's a really awful situation. You just have to take the positives from it and just gain as much as you can. And I think for the Nuggets and Michael Porter Jr., this is the only way you have to look at it. Milwaukee, again, we talked a little bit about their two big wins against Brooklyn. On their end, again, Giannis had a really good game in the first end of the home and home back-to-back they had against Brooklyn. Not so much in the second game. I think, again, it comes down to the jump shooting. If it's going against the way Brooklyn played him, against any team, really, right? If Giannis has a jump shot going, he's the best player in the league. But it's a big if. And, some other guys that are obviously keys. Chris Middleton played pretty well. I think he'll be a key as well. All eyes are going to be on him in the playoffs, as they usually are, because Giannis usually does all right, and then it's kind of Chris Middleton having some really bad games. There's some games where he just doesn't look present, and all eyes are going to be on him. Jrue Holiday is a good pickup. Obviously he's a good pickup, but going into the playoffs, especially because he's had some really good playoff series. I remember the playoff series he had against Portland when the Pelicans swept them. The matchup between him and Kyrie is going to be really fun to watch. I think Jrue Holiday has to be, I talked about this in my video, but I think he has to be even more aggressive than usual in that series, because I think that while he's going to do a really good job of trying to not stop, but at least contain Kyrie, the more aggressive he is on offense, I think the more, you can wear out Kyrie as well. And it's almost, defense by offense, in the fact that, again, the more you can go at him, the more you can kind of just wear him out, and he might be a little bit less effective on defense. And he is the worst defender out of the big three. I know James Harden got a lot of flack for his defense, but analytically, again, he's an above average post defender, and I think he has become a better defender. I think Kyrie still lacks and lags behind James Harden, and we all know Kevin Durant's a plus defender when he's healthy. So engaged, because I will say there were times during even that Bucks game where he made some defensive mistakes, and I think some of it is just kind of being a regular season game. I think in Kevin's mind, he wants to just be healthy. He's waiting for the playoffs, and I think he'll ramp it back up. But Milwaukee, they've been pretty good. I think I've been pretty critical of them over the season, and a lot of that is just because of how much I've expected from them over the success they've had over the last few years, and I've just kind of expected them to build off of that. Budenholzer, I think, does have a grip on this team more so than he did earlier on this season, because there were times where this team just looked really stagnant on both sides of the ball. And I talked about this multiple times, but I think their defense is still not as good as it needs to be. I think they have a lot of lapses. I was talking about the Bucks game against, I think, the Rockets, when Kevin Porter Jr. went off for 50. But Jrue Holiday has some mistakes. The effort just wasn't always there. I think the switching isn't always, people aren't always on the same page. Guys like PJ Tucker, who came in midseason, Jrue Holiday, were having some miscommunication. Talked about Brook Lopez aging, and I think that, you have a team with Brook still, Giannis, Chris Middleton, Jrue Holiday, PJ Tucker. You should be better defensively. And I still feel like, and they're not bad by any means, but they still make too many mistakes than I would like to see from a team with that many, top-end defensive guys. The Clippers at 7 went through a little bit of a loss streak, but they've just been banged up, right? Kawhi's missed games, Patrick Beverley's missed games, Ibaka's missing games. Another team that just needs to get healthy. But I will say Paul George looked really good, especially down, in the fourth quarters, which is always a thing to keep an eye on with Paul George, because of, just his some of his letdowns and, unfortunate performances during crunch time. So that was good to see. The Knicks are at 8 on ESPN, which I'm perfectly happy with. Would have liked to see them higher, but they've won, I think, 12 of their last 13, and it's going to be difficult, right? Because look, they are a game and a half above the Hawks and 2.5 above the Heat, or in front of the Celtics. And so they have the inside track for the fourth seed, the home court advantage. But with 8 games left, I think now 7 maybe. It's a lot of tough games, right? You have a couple games against Phoenix, LA, Denver, both LA teams actually. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a test. But this team, for the whole season, really have defied odds. They've shut up the haters, and it's been really fun to watch, really fun to root for. So we'll see. Maybe this is just it'd be icing on the cake if they can finish the regular season off hot and winning a lot of those games. Again, it won't be easy, but it will be a good test for this team. The one thing I did want to point out, and I talked about this, I think, on Twitter, was I see a lot of guys, right, on media, social media, on TV, guys like Jay Adande and Shannon Sharp, amongst others, kind of talking and tweeting about how the Knicks aren't going to win the finals. And I get that. I understand that. I don't think they're going to win the finals. But it was just kind of, it felt unnecessary. Maybe I'm just being soft and childish. But it was just it felt super unnecessary because, right, whenever the Nets are good, the Suns are good, the Hawks are good again. When these teams are good again that haven't been necessarily good recently, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of positivity, everyone's talking good about it. But it seems like for the Knicks, it always has to be a negative connotation. And if you ask the majority of Knicks fans, especially the smart ones, and I know we have some really dumb fans, as does every fan base, but if you ask most Knicks fans, they'll tell you that they're not winning the finals. But for some reason, the pundits, the media members out there feel the need to not focus on the positives. And I understand there's been a lot of focus on the positives as well. So I'm not going to say that there's been no media attention around the Knicks win streaks, the Julius Randle performances, Derrick Rose's resurgence, RJ Barrett proving people wrong. So I won't say that there's not enough attention on that. But I just feel like the hate, the highlighting the fact that we're not going to win the finals, I feel like that's unnecessary. I don't know what we did to Lakers fans. It feels like it is a lot of Lakers fans are Lakers fans analysts, right? Jay Adande covers LA. Shannon Sharp, obviously a LeBron fan. I don't know what Knicks fans did to them. I don't know if their feelings are hurt or what. I don't know if it's because we actually have a better record than them. Maybe that's why, and they're just surprised. They're hurt. I don't know. But it just felt unnecessary. I don't know why they needed to take a shot at the Knicks when you could either just compliment on how good they've been, which again, a lot of people have. So if you don't want to do that, could have just not said anything, because I'm guarantee you most Knicks fans know that they're not winning the finals, right? So just wanted to talk about that real quick. Lakers, pretty big news this week just because of what LeBron said about his ankle and his injury, and he said he'll never be 100%. I don't know if that's him. I don't know if he truly believes that or if he's just kind of going through, I know when Kobe tore his ACL, he thought he was done. And sometimes when you're a legend and both of those guys actually had pretty good health for the most part throughout their careers. And they've both dealt with, obviously, nagging injuries and pain here and there. But, neither of them really had super big injuries up until later on in their careers. And it can be difficult for guys who almost feel like they're superheroes to have injuries like this and kind of finally out of nowhere face mortality, in the sense that, okay, my body is starting to wear down. So maybe it kind of is just him coming to grips and battling that. I know some people have pointed out that it's him kind of manipulating the media again and giving himself a little bit of a gap in case the playoffs don't go as well as it goes, or he hopes it to. I don't know if that's the case, but I that is news because, again, LeBron, the biggest name in our game, saying that about his body is it is a reminder to everyone that he's not going to play forever. And, hopefully he gets to as close to as 100% as possible, because the Lakers, do have a shot at running it back and, getting back to the finals and winning it. But, and I've never been a huge LeBron fan, but, again, you just respect the greatness, and realize that he's not going to be playing forever. So hopefully people keep that in mind, and whatever happens. But just wanted to talk about that. So that rounds up the top 10. Dallas was 10th. Not really too much to talk about, honestly. Another thing I did want to talk about real quick was and I posted on Instagram about this. So if you haven't seen that yet, go check it out. It is a Keep It Hoop blog on Twitter, and keep underscore it underscore hoop on Instagram. If you haven't followed us, go follow us. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about the media and social media's kind of depiction and judgment of Russell Westbrook as a player at this point in his career. Now, I've been a Russell Westbrook fan since really earlier on in his career, probably second or third year in his career. I gravitated towards he was really fun to watch because of the athleticism, but his energy really just caught my eyes, right? I grew up being a Kobe fan, an MJ fan, and the way I played younger wasn't nearly as athletic as any of those guys. But the one thing I always took away was just being able to play both sides of the ball, being aggressive, competing. And the one common denominator those guys have is not really being out there to make friends, right? Like, yes, I've made a lot of friends playing basketball, but I'm not out there going, trying to make friends or trying to, be pals with everyone. And that is a criticism some people have with today's NBA or guys in today's league. That's, I guess, a conversation for a different time. But yeah, I mean, I just loved his competitiveness, just his passion, his drive, how he's willing to do everything it takes to win a game, and really just that energy. So yeah, that's my kind of background on my Russell Westbrook fandom. That being said, I think it's weird today because I feel like a lot of guys who talk about Russell Westbrook are just on either end of the extreme spectrums. Some people think that he's washed up and that he sucks. Some people think he's the best point guard in the NBA. And neither of those things are true. Right. So the first thing I want to talk about, the triple doubles. I grew up, so I started watching basketball early 2000s when triple doubles were a lot rare. Stat chasing wasn't as prevalent, and you also had a scenario of, the pace being slower. So triple doubles were a lot more rare, and because of that, a lot more impressive when it happened. Now triple doubles happen, it seems nightly, and Russell Westbrook is one of the guys to get triple doubles, right? I'm not saying he's stat chasing because, like, having played in basketball games, leagues, at schools, travel leagues, whatever, stat chasing isn't easy, right? You don't just go out and say, okay, I want a triple double, and then you get a triple double. And for him to have gotten as many triple doubles as he's gotten, you don't just get it from stat chasing. It's because he tries hard, because he's he's looking for his teammates, and he can score, right? So it's not easy what he's doing, or else other people would average triple doubles or whatever, right? There's a reason why the people who get triple doubles are still the good players: Luka Doncic, Jokic, what have you, LeBron. Those guys, right? But I will say the thing that frustrates me the most, and I think this is kind of led to, and it's kind of the what came first, the chicken or the egg thing, because you have now outlets like ESPN or NBA.TV or NBA.TV, and then you also have TNT and Bleacher Report, and all these places are highlighting Russell Westbrook's triple doubles whenever he gets them, right? They post 27, 14, and 12. He had 18, 20, and 19, like those triple doubles, right? Like they're posting those. But they also don't post the turnovers. They also don't post the field goal percentages he has, the 3-point percentages he has, the free throw percentages he has. And I just want people to, or I want those outlets to post as much as possible, because I know you're not going to post someone's complete stat line, or at least talk about it in the captions or whatever, so that people get a full understanding of it. Because without the full stat sheet, or without as much information as possible, and without the context, that's why people get skewed. And I think the judgment of who Russell Westbrook is as a player. And again, I wanted to talk about this because it's like, I think the triple double thing, at least, it's like, do these outlets talk about the triple doubles because so many people are now obsessed with triple doubles, or are people obsessed with triple doubles because all these outlets do is highlight triple doubles? And I don't want to get to a scenario where, like, a lot of these players or fans growing up see how much triple doubles are fantasized, and then they go out and when they play, they aim to get triple doubles, right? Again, I'm not saying stat chasing is a thing, or that it's not a thing, but I don't want a scenario where a lot of players or more kids or players go out playing like that. But to the other side of the argument, for the people that say that he's, washed up trash, he's obviously not, right? Again, what he's doing on a nightly basis is difficult. When he gets a triple-double, his team does have a good win percentage. The energy he puts out onto the defensive end when he is focused and engaged, which isn't necessarily all the time anymore. I will point that out. But, I mean, his ability to still hit shots, get to the paint, dish out to his guys and still rebound. It's not easy what he does, playing with that kind of energy on a nightly basis. So still has to be a lot of credit given there, but even as a fan, I'm not going to crown him the best point guard. Not even close. You're taking Steph and Dame over him, and then you still have the argument of Kyrie and even Chris Paul. I had Russell Westbrook on even my fantasy team, and I can tell you from even that perspective, but also just like you imagine your starting point guard having a lot of nights where he's getting 6, 7, 8, 9 turnovers, and then he's shooting 60% from the free throw line, and then he has a lot of nights where he's shooting 35% from the field. Those things are detrimental regardless of how many points, rebounds, and assists you're getting, right? That's not efficient basketball. So if you look at even just the numbers, like Steph and Dame are comparable in some categories. But then you also have the fact that they're way more efficient, and I think it's easier to play along with those guys to a degree. So I'm just going to put them over the top. But I just got tired of people being on either ends of the spectrum with Russ. I think he's really good, and possibly, at times lower, and just good because of how inefficient he can be. But he's neither the greatest point guard in the league or the worst. So I need people to stop with that talk. But yeah, that'll be it for today. Again, first podcast episode in a few weeks. We will be back with another video on Friday. Again, Keep It Hoop on YouTube. Hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment if you're watching this on YouTube. Stay tuned. Follow us on our social media pages, like I said. And we'll see you guys again soon. Peace.